Humility is not thinking less of yourself. It is thinking of yourself less. Rick Warren.
Welcome to the Instinctive Influencers Podcast, a show where influence becomes one of your tools for success. Now, here are your hosts, Brian Weber and Ed Haley.
Hi, I'm Brian.
And I am Ed.
And this is the Instinctive Influencers Podcast. Ed, we are back. It's been it's like life threw us a big, massive like ball of what this past week. We tried to get together multiple times. And each time it's like you were like, hey, I can't do this one because I got to do this. And then I send you a message yesterday. I was like, oh, I can't do this and because I got to do this, and it's funny. We were just talking about the teleworking, because everything that's going on right now. And, we'll be able to look back on this in history, but it's funny how involved you actually are, even though you're kind of disengaged a little bit.
Yeah, no. First of all, teleworking is, if you are actually teleworking, it's a lot of work, man. But you do, for some reason, I still get more work done at home. I guess it's because you don't get those gotta minutes that we've talked about on some other episodes.
Right.
But if you're doing it, it is a lot of work.
You don't.
So what I did.
Yeah, you don't have. I have children.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So what I have done this week, Brian, I didn't tell you this before the show is, I was thinking about these teleworking folks. And me and my captain, we've been coming to work every day, and our civilian that we work for. So 2 days this week, I went to work in civilian clothes, and I was like, hey, I'm teleworking from the office. So I'm in the same uniform they're in because I'm pretty sure most of them don't even put on pants when they're working. So I definitely went to work and was like, hey, I told them I'll put it on the purse stat if you want that I'm teleworking from work.
I totally get you, man, with the whole teleworking. So no joke. I'm a whiteboard person. I love using whiteboards for all kinds of things because to me, it's like I can jot some stuff on there. I could take a picture of it if I need it for later. I can erase it real quick and redo stuff. So we had an extra whiteboard just sitting in the office. I grabbed that bad boy and it is downstairs. And I etch everything on there. So we have to do these basically. So social distancing is a thing. Yes. But at the same time, they still want us to kind of check on our soldiers type thing. So we have to do these home visits and you don't go in the house. You stay about 10 feet from the door, all that stuff, right? You just show up, you say hi, ask if everything's okay. You get an eyes on them, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Which I don't disagree with. Some people are kind of upset with it, but I think if you do it smartly, you're going to be fine, right? I got a mask. I'm gonna wear my mask, and all that stuff. But no joke, man. I had to get all these addresses. And I had to figure out, okay, I'm gonna split up all these platoon sergeants up, and not just platoon sergeants. I also got some senior staff sergeants and whatnot that are a part of my group that I'm gonna go check on. And so I marked them up like 1 through whatever for today in one area of town. And then tomorrow's 1 through whatever for another area of town. And then I get on Google and I play with the map and all this stuff. So yeah, it's kind of, I've got it all broken up and I even shot them this morning, the ones I'm visiting later on today. I shot them the time with a plus or minus 5 minutes that I would be at their home because I was able to kind of do all this. And I thought to myself, I'm like, it's kind of a good idea, even as a leader, you kind of establish that, hey, it's good to know where you live. And we used to do this a long time ago. If you remember correctly, back in the day, we used to do the strip maps and put them in our leaders' books. And you knew where people lived, but people didn't really go physically and see where it was, right? And I think that's I think it kind of meshes into what we're going to get into today. And when you read that quote from Rick Warren, which I really like, I've always really liked that quote. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. So I don't think I'm lower than anything. It's just I don't think about myself. I need to start thinking about myself less, and that's what it means. And I think about those home visits, man, and I think like where we're going to go with this and we're doing this. It's kind of, yeah, I'm going to burn some gas. Got it. I don't care. You know what? It's a little bit of money. Well, to be honest, I have a truck that eats gas like crazy. I'm on the same tank of gas for the past 2 weeks because I haven't traveled that much. Normally, I'm filling up every 3 days, man. So, um, but I just kind of I wanted to associate that, and then you were mentioning a little bit about entering the gate yesterday, and you had to make a correction.
Yeah.
And I thought about how you said that story and what you were talking about, and I'll let you tell the story. But I thought about it, and I thought to myself, I was like, what you did was literally not thinking of yourself, but to make sure others also were thinking about others in that manner. You want to tell us that story, man?
Yeah, so we're doing these gates, the gate thing, and we have questions we have to ask. And off the top of my head, it's like, have you been diagnosed with COVID-19? Have you been around anyone who has flu-like symptoms? Do you have a temperature? And there's a couple
Right.
difficulty breathing. So I come through, and I'm in civilian clothes, so that the soldier doesn't know. And the soldier says to me, "Hey, you feeling all right?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Okay, you're good to go." It's absolutely not. I said, is that the question you're supposed to ask? Is that what's on the script that's been given to you? No. I said, all right, so let's do the right thing
Yeah.
and not be lazy.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't, matter of fact, retelling the story, bro. I don't even think I ever even said, "Hey, I'm Sergeant, such and such." I don't think I ever even said. I just made the correction and moved on. And then my wife had the same thing. So difference is being, of course, she's a civilian. So it's a
Right.
little more difficult for her to make a correction, but you know, she comes to the gate and the soldier just says, "Have you heard the questions before? Are any of them no?
Mhm.
Okay, ma'am, you're good." Like, what is that? So,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
yeah, no, I just corrected him because when you think about, yes, is it repetitive? Yep. I've done the gate guard myself. I've put myself on the duty and been out there for 3 hours at a time.
Mhm.
And you're asking the same 4 or 5 questions over and over, especially if you get it when
Yeah.
everybody's coming to work. So I get it that it's repetitive, but that doesn't mean you take a shortcut, because now what he really freed me up to do is say, you know, yes, I'm feeling good, and meanwhile I feel terrible. I have a fever,
Mhm.
uh
Right, right, right.
so it's just just doing the right thing, and you're protecting the force. It even says it in the little script. I have been directed to ask the following questions in order to ensure the safety of the force. Like,
Right.
well,
Yeah. No, and it's yeah, anybody can answer the questions the way they want to, right? It's about
yeah,
integrity.
absolutely.
Obviously, you can tell if somebody's coming through and they're sweating bullets and whatnot. You'd be like, "Hey, you sure you okay?" But at the same time, what by you making that correction, I think what you did is you're kind of establishing that idea of, hey, listen, you got to put others before yourself here. He was being, in a sense, you said lazy. I also want to say selfish. Selfish because he didn't want to waste his time on asking all those questions, or he felt like it was redundant, boring. Everyone's already heard this. Well, yeah and no. Not everyone has heard it. Maybe the very next person in the car behind you may have never had to enter a post and now they did,
Yep.
type thing. It's just one of those things, and it's putting how I feel to the back burner about this, because there is a job to get done,
Yeah.
and I need to think about the other people, and their health and their safety. So, and that's why, I thought about that, and I was like, man, that really relates to our show of the day, which is humility. Let's not talk about me. With this, right off the bat, we want to talk about, there's some key points that we need to look at. It's about 4 key points, and then we're going to get into there's a total of 9 reasons why humility is the key ingredient to exceptional leadership and influence. And then we're going to finish off the show with 3 simple steps to how to be humble as a leader. And it's really 3 simple steps, and to me, those are the starting blocks, or the foundation of humility and being humble as a leader. So we're going to go through all this, but right now, let's hit up these 3 key points. First one is, humility is an important but under discussed value of leadership. Ed, over your years throughout the service, and even when you were, doing retail and stuff, when you were in between jobs, of the military, Did you ever have like, was there ever a candid discussion did you think of about humility as a leader?
As a leader, I I I can't really recall one. I mean, um, yeah, I can't really recall one. To talk about how important humility is to you as a leader. Um,
Mm-hmm.
no, no, I can't recall one, Brian.
See, mine wasn't probably until a bit later, and it wasn't really a discussion. It was, I guess you could say, I was being arrogant, and I was told you might want to be a
No.
little bit more humble than that. Yeah, yeah, hey, but and I put some thought to it, but over the years now, the concentration towards it and the looking at it and through my college classes, some of my classes have even, because a master's degree in executive leadership, one of the things that they get into is the servant leadership style, and you go over different styles and philosophies. And humility is the big overarching one that really, it seems to be the concentration. But it wasn't until later in my career. So even, as a junior, I wasn't being taught to be humble. And I think about it, Ed, and I think, maybe that's where some of that toxicity that I've talked about before that I had back then came from because I didn't learn that humility. And I can tell you right now, the person, it was his name, David Verissimo. He was the one that told me I needed to be a little bit more humble and show some humility because I was so arrogant. I was one of those PT studs that just like, oh, if you can't do that, that mentality.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah. Um, so here's the next one. Next key point. Humble leaders are considered more approachable, forgiving of mistakes, and willing to acknowledge others' work, which can motivate employees to share ideas and work harder. I think I don't want to discuss that one too much because we're really going to dive into that when we get into the 9 reasons, right? We're going to hit upon those areas. But then let's go key point number 3. Humility becomes more important as a leader's responsibility increases. What are your thoughts about that with the whole, as your responsibility has increased, you need to show even more humility?
Well, I think it is important to, because now, first of all, as our responsibility increases, so does the visibility of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
As a sergeant, E5, or a corporal, you can kind of lay back and kind of hide. But as a senior, like, you're right out front. And we've talked about setting a culture.
Mm-hmm.
And if you, as the boss, if you don't exercise humility, you're setting a culture that's okay
Right.
in your organization, and then you're creating that toxic environment, and allowing it to grow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And to me, when you're allowing that to grow, it's almost like you're shining a light, and people will see it more, and they will try. Because obviously, as you increase in responsibility or you increase in positions, you're you're seen more. And because you're seen more, you're displaying the behavior that you want the rest of the organization to have. Right. So I definitely I have to agree with you there. And then let's number 4, the number 4 key point here. Cultivate and this okay, so before I read it, I can tell you right now, this was a thing for me when I went to EOL school, or Equal Opportunity Leaders School. It was a 2-week course. I did that. Did you do EOL?
I did. Matter of fact, at one point, I was your battalion EOL, when we were deployed.
That's right. I do remember that.
Yeah.
Man, that was years ago, bro.
Years
Yeah.
ago.
Well, no, I mean, you think about it because like we've known each other for a while, but I'm thinking, man, the last time we deployed, that was quite a few. You think
13.
Yeah, that's 7,
Yeah.
7 years ago. We got back in I think the end of 14 or the beginning of 14.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
So yeah, but I was your EOL
mhm.
as a battalion
I
representative.
remember. I remember that now. Yeah. But that's why this last one, I think equal opportunity, this is one of those things where I feel like it falls in that humility part. But anyways, cultivating humility as a leader requires knowing when to ask for help, using inclusive language when talking about work and accomplishments, and giving credit to others. So the
Mm,
asking help and the credit to others, that's not what I meant by that. What I really liked was that in that middle part is using the inclusive language. One of the ones that they taught us was saying, okay, guys, or hey, guys, you're only being inclusive, you're being exclusive to a certain group of people when you say, hey guys,
Uh-oh.
things like that. Well,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Eh,
And I've caught,
oh,
and
sorry, Brian.
I'm one of those people, man. I am definitely not into that. So I try to change my language over the years that I don't say that anymore. What were you going to say?
I was going to tell you to cue the commercial. So I remember that being a pet peeve of the bearded ninja.
Have you ever swam across the Bering Strait in that cold, frigid water? Your beard's what's keeping you afloat because of its fullness. You know how you get that fullness? The Bearded Ninja Beard Balm made of snake venom and pomade. The snake venom is what keeps away the horrible fish that want to eat you, and the pomade helps keep you afloat. That's the Bearded Ninja Beard Balm. Made everywhere, sold nowhere.
So I remember that's a lesson that I remember very early when you you do the teaching and they have you get up there and facilitate a class and then they eat you up like him
Yeah.
and Rebecca
Yeah.
and they critiqued you, right? And that was always one of those things is oh, you're only talking to the males in the class because you keep saying, he or guys. And I remember that being a big pet peeve for him.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess you could say it's one of those things that it's a habit that you have to learn to break. And, it could be everything from the crutch words too. And those are a sort of form of a crutch words when people say, all right, guys, hey guys, that type of thing. But at the same time, I don't want to leave out the other two parts of that about cultivating humility as a leader requires knowing when to ask for help. I did some time ago. I sent out this was when I was in Korea as a first sergeant. I sent out to my platoon sergeants. It was an article that I thought was kind of a refreshing thing as a leader to say, it's okay to say, did I get that from you? Yeah, I did get it from you, but it's okay to say, I don't know and ask for help. And that was, I want to say you pulled it from, it was either the Encino Journal or something like that, but you're the one that gave it to me. You emailed it to me actually. I think that's a big thing because what that does is that shows that you're not a know-it-all. You're not above everyone else. And you're susceptible of not being knowledgeable on something. And then obviously giving credit to others. Your thoughts, man?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't really have anything.
Okay.
I really didn't have anything. So actually I did. So this is one, Brian, of our experiences together. If you remember, right? Soldier gets in trouble, gets removed from being a facilitator mysteriously in the early hours of the morning. And this soldier had always taught the map reading course.
Oh, yeah.
Of a block of instruction.
Yes.
And I had to swallow my pride and say, hey, Sergeant Weber, I have never taught this. And I'm probably a little scared to death about this right now.
Yeah.
So I had to ask you for help. And you came in there and you taught it. And then inclusive language is also another thing about you. That's very much a pet peeve. The whole, I mean, not inclusive language, the talking about accomplishments, that's very much a you thing. The we before I.
Yeah.
That's we succeed, we fail.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are a couple of things with this one. When I looked it over, I was like, yeah, this is absolutely some of the history with Brian and I.
Yeah. And it's funny. I was thankful that you came and asked me for the help that time. But at the same time, I was extremely relieved that it wasn't something that I was clueless on because I felt bad. Like, I don't know what to do. Maybe we get somebody else,
Law of war. You didn't want to teach law of war.
Well, so law of war, it wasn't that I was clueless on. It was just that is a boring subject. Yes. Yeah. That, and to me, command supply discipline was always boring. Now you enjoyed it, I know, because that's your thing. But
yes, it was my thing. That's what it was.
Yeah, definitely. And you brought up that inclusive language and how we talk things. One of the things that I've caught myself doing, and people can do this in any type of work environment, is, for instance, when I send out a message or I'm discussing things with platoon sergeants, I don't like to say things like your soldiers. I try to say our soldiers, our company, a lot of we's, stuff like that. So ours and we's replaced with I's, me's, and you's, because I kind of feel like if I say, hey, tell your soldiers to do this, it's literally taking me out of the equation as I'm not a part of this. Versus if I say, hey, I need you to tell our soldiers this, what it's saying is to me, it's kind of like a metaphoric thing of I can't reach everyone. I need your help in reaching everyone. Does that make sense?
No, that actually really makes sense because you're humbling yourself to ask these people who, they work for you. You're
Yeah.
really asking them for assistance is what you're doing. And right back to what we talked about just a couple weeks ago. Now you're letting that be the culture of your organization that, we before I is part of that
Mhm.
organization's, it's part of the makeup of that organization. So it's sending a positive message.
Yeah, hey man, we are so rabbit holing right now because you just said something else that brought to mind. You said when you said the all those people working for me, that's another thing that like it bothers me when I hear people say, like when they introduce themselves. For instance, let me say I'm with Sergeant Snuffy, and Sergeant Snuffy introduces his spouse to me. uh, my thing is, oh, it's good to meet you, ma'am. I love working with your husband or your wife or whatever. Versus, well, yeah, your husband works for me. You know what I mean? Like, I think when I'm wording it as such as, oh yeah, I know such they work with me. I don't like to say, oh yeah, that
Yeah.
person. A lot of times, like when I refer to you, whether it be on the podcast or even when I'm talking about you with other people about the podcast, outside, at work or wherever, when somebody asks me about it, yeah, I say, oh yeah, he's a guy that I worked with. I never talk about you ever working for me. You really didn't in a sense, but you know what I mean? Like too many people are into that power trip, right? Of they want to
Yeah.
be the head person. And I think the start of that is of to being a good humble leader is to putting everybody before you by not being that arrogant, power hungry person.
Yeah. And I think that, actually, I think that I shouldn't comment because if I comment, I might lead you in another rabbit hole.
Oh yeah, man, you are hooking me up, man. Just loading up the guns with ammo. Anyways, so I think what we need to do now is we got to get into these 9 reasons. And since I've done most of the talking so far, Ed, I'm gonna knock out this intro to it, and then if you don't mind, are you ready to jump into humanity?
Why not?
All right, so here we go. 9 reasons humility is the key ingredient to exceptional leadership and influence. Now, when I originally found this material, I added influence to this because when you start reading down through here, we're going to see a lot of influence as a key indicator. But the people we admire and feel most inspired to follow are those who do not have a need to showboat their accomplishments or convince others of their greatness. Oh man, I could speak for days on that. Showboats are more of a turn off than a turn on when it comes to leadership. We are most inspired by leaders who show exceptional character, who take pride in who they are and in what they have accomplished. Humble leaders use their skills, knowledge, and experience, love that part, knowledge and experience, to bring people together to increase productivity, to improve quality of life, and to create a positive culture. Leaders who come from humility use their success for the greater good rather than for self glorification. If I was to pull that particular little paragraph out of any particular book that I've read recently, I'm going to tell you right now, leaders eat last. That is a book of nothing but humility, really. But what I just read there, that to me is Simon Sinek preaching it. I have his new Infinite Game one, and it very much speaks on that also. I've been listening to it. I'm almost done with it. And then I move on to About Face. I'm going to do the audiobook, Ed. Uh, I'll probably do the hard book
It's
with.
long.
I know I'm gonna do the audiobook because it said like 40 hours. I'm like 40 hours. I picked it up on Audible, but and I'm kind of interested to see where Hackworth interjects humility at all. I'm curious to find it in his book. But what are your thoughts, or do you want to just jump right in at humanity?
Well, the one thing that, if you think about that last little sentence, it kind of goes right back to the quote that we opened the show with. Leaders who come from humility use their success for the greater good rather than their self glorification. So the
Yes.
greater good, so the bigger picture. That's basically what we're saying, and that's really what Rick Warren said in the opening quote, Brian. But so speaking of humility, right? We're talking about today. The first item that we have, the first reason humility is a key ingredient to exceptional leadership and influence is humanity. And so it says the little blurb that I have starts with a sense of humility is vital to great leadership because it authenticates a person's humanity.
Mm.
And then it goes on. So basically, what it's saying is, you know, nobody's perfect. And if you have that leadership who comes across as perfect, then they're not approachable. So they're not perfect because they're not approachable because people feel like that they're on this pedestal and that they don't, they're kind of put off about approaching them.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you've seen that leader before. And this part of the article, it really plays back to when we talked way back. We've talked about self-awareness several times.
Yes.
And according to this, and not according to this, actually, great leaders have a depth of understanding garnered from their experience. We've also talked about the value in our experience many, many times. And
Yes.
that's where we learn to identify not just our strengths and weaknesses, right? But go back to our talent management episode. We learn to identify strengths and weaknesses in those that work with and for us, uh, so that we can use them as a use them where they can thrive, I guess is the best way to say it, Brian. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so when you have that perfect leader, nobody wants to go to them. They want to understand that, the leader has flaws just like I have flaws. I want to be comfortable to go talk to that person. Does that make sense, Brian?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I think I can tell you right now, if I notice somebody who actually says, hey, listen, this is what I'm thinking, but I'm not completely sure on all this. What are your thoughts? I think that actually sounds very much like some of the stuff we've already been talking. We talked about even last episode. But to me, that's saying, oh, so this person doesn't expect me to be perfect. They just want me to get it done the best I can. And if I need help, I'll ask it. And that's that whole piece where it's you feel safe. Simon Sinek, we'll probably reference him a lot here today. I'm not sure where we'll get with it, but and to tell you the truth, we can even reference Jocko on this, but it's that circle of safety, he calls it. That golden circle. He says that if I feel danger inside of that circle, then my circle is going to get smaller and smaller, and less people will be included. I think that falls back on what we talked about earlier with that inclusion. If people feel safe, all right, and they feel accepted, then they're going to feel included. And that can be, I mean, that can be a real test too for a leader to work on. You're focused on all these other things, or even an influencer within whatever organization, but you're also at the same time trying to be mindful, which we've done a lot of things on mindful, of how people are being included, and your level of arrogance or your level of ego or anything that you're
Yeah.
interjecting that could actually make somebody withdraw themselves from the organization. So yeah, great point, brother.
No, it is. And so the other thing, Brian, when you have humility, that's where that can, we talked about the perfect guy. There's no connection there. But when you have some kind of humility and you reveal that you have strengths and weaknesses, then that's where the connection comes from. The connection, like you said, makes people feel safe and accepted. And that is where the ability to guide somebody and to teach, coach, and mentor, as we say in the military, that person to help them to improve. And I think that's what ties it all together and why humanity is on this list. I don't think these are in any particular order. I don't believe so.
No, I don't think it. I think what it is it's. I think falling back on that mindfulness thing. I think it's just, hey, listen, when this part arises, you may want to think about this. So if when it's just how I talk. If I'm talking a certain way, or if I'm singling people out in a certain way that is negative, then I may need to refrain from that. I may need to withdraw that. And it could be as simple as somebody making the wrong decision, right? Instead of sitting in a meeting and chastising those individuals. Instead, I'd be like, yeah, well, I wasn't quite sure about that, but hey, I want to talk to you later about this, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then pull them aside, do a one-on-one if you have to, or maybe even bring a peer if that's a trusted individual. Personally, I rather do the one-on-one than the bringing in a peer in, because that also can be
Oh
embarrassing.
yeah.
But bring a one-on-one and just talk to them. I say, listen, I understand your thought process, or I'm having a hard time understanding your thought process. I don't think that was the right decision. Why would you make that decision? And allow them to speak for it, and then you can talk through it, and you're like, oh, okay. And if you get a certain why in the road, and you see that they decided to take the left instead of taking the right, you can say, well, wouldn't you think if you would have went blah 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 blah, that would have been a little bit better? And what you're doing is you're helping grow them. That's that lifelong learning we talk about. That's that knowledge, that
Mm-hmm.
experience. And I think personally, that's showing humanity, because I'm not going to stand there. You've been watching the Tiger King,
I have watched the Tiger King twice.
all of the
I-
series.
Thanks for putting me on the spot. I watched it, and then when my wife watched it, I may have watched it again.
Okay, well, I'm only saying this because I haven't finished it. Like, we literally are taking our time on it because we're savoring every episode. And you should hear, like, in my house, like, the comments me and my wife throw back at each other. Like, I can't believe Carol Baskins didn't wash the dishes, something like that. And no offense to her. I mean, I hope everything works out for her, and her tigers in little tiny cages. But
You're terrible.
one of the okay, maybe I should have said it that way. One of the things that I noticed just the last night watching the episode was with Joe. Joe's like, the way he was treating people at that little zoo and how he would holler at them and stuff. I'm like, oh my goodness, this guy needs a lesson in humility.
Yes.
Pronto, right? So I don't know. It made me think of that. So those of you listening, if you haven't watched The Tiger King yet on Netflix, we're not a sponsor of it, but let me tell you, it is pure entertainment gold.
It's train wreck theater is what it is.
Like, I'm excited to see what's next for Netflix. Like, I think that's part of the reason why we haven't like gotten rid of it, because we have Hulu and we can watch a lot of other things. I'm like, well, what is Netflix going to do next? Because the first one I watched was Don't F with Cats. That was a train wreck, and like, you're like, okay. And then this one, Tiger King, you're like, oh, what's next? Nothing could get better than this. But what I was getting to here was
wow.
yeah, like, I was way off. What I was getting to here is wow, that is a definite example of somebody who is lacking all humility, doesn't know anything about humanity. And I'm pretty sure he's going to miss the mark. Or in that show, many of the people in that show, by the way, they're going to miss the mark on most of these 9 areas that we're going to talk about.
I think so too. Yeah. So, it's funny. You talked about the scene where he's yelling at everybody. And I actually think that you may be able to roll that into number 2, Brian.
Oh yeah. So there is the scene where he is cussing somebody out, and so, by the way, obviously we don't cuss on the show and we don't do things like that, but we may reference, like, so for instance, The Tiger King. If you do watch it, I'm going to pre-warn you, there is salty language. There are a lot of
adult situations.
Yes, adult situations, a lot of things that you may not be comfortable with. So just, if you don't feel comfortable with it, then don't watch it. That's all I'm going to say. I don't want somebody to feel like they have to watch it to get anything we're saying.
I would say pay attention to the ratings that Netflix puts up there, because there's drug use and there's adult situations. So
yeah, right.
I would pay attention, and I would not watch it. Listen, the cats are wonderful, but they're not cute and cuddly for your kids to look at. I definitely
don't watch it.
But pay attention to the ratings. That's what I would say.
Yeah, don't watch it with the kids. A lot of times I watch things in. So entertainment is one thing. Another thing is this. I was, no joke, I had already read this everything we were going to talk about, and I was literally thinking about this show when I was watching that scene. But the very next one is number 2, balanced authority. And one of the scenes when he is cussing somebody out about, this is my meeting, you don't talk in my meeting. And I'm like, that's kind of, like, that is backwards of what you want. You want a collective thought process. You want everybody throwing in their ideas. And what we're going to talk about here is, most people are, they're disgusted by that loud, that egotistical authority figures, or, who
Oh
lead from
yeah.
basically from that narrow mindedness, or the my way or the highway fear tactics. They they try to shame you. They try to throw threats at you, like I'll fire you, blah blah blah, or
Hmm.
they just try to do intimidation, as a basically a general way of trying to rule, so to speak. And so
Yeah, it's
you have to think
bullying.
about, yeah, exactly, right? So you have to think about this as in, if I'm being humble, I'm not in my kingdom. Ed, you remember when we used to tell all the time, hey, listen, instructors, stop being on in your classroom kingdom and start being a part of the class, right? Do you remember that?
Oh man, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's always, you always have certain platoons that like, well, and I think we talked about it a little bit. My platoon's squared away. Like yeah, no, you got to come out of there. And you had one that that platoon stayed together for a long time, and they all were of the same military occupational specialty, I think, except like one. You remember that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And that platoon had a culture. They had a culture in it of how things run, and it was all fed through the leadership.
Yeah, exactly. And that's
Yep.
and that to me, when you breed that culture. Now, it's okay to say our team is the best, for some small competition type things. But if you're always putting your team, or your part, trying to put it as in like everyone else is beneath you, yeah, you're messing up. So I really think with this whole balanced authority, one of the key things we have to think about is that how rank certainly brings status and power. Yeah. Uh, but you don't really need that.
Oh man,
You don't I don't need to say, yeah, I'm the first sergeant and this is how it's going to be. No. Instead, I can.
that's
So
true.
let's just throw a scenario. So, for instance, the COVID-19 thing. Soldiers, we have to wear protective gear, to kind of protect ourselves, and that's great. I'm glad we're doing it. I don't have to put it out in a chat message to all my platoon sergeants, because I'm the first sergeant. You're going to wear the mask. Why did I even have to add that in there? Right. Instead, I could
Yeah,
reword that to, listen, we really have to think about our soldiers first. And in that manner, we need to make sure that all of our soldiers have the correct protective gear on when in, areas where groups of
yeah,
people are, stuff like that. So what I'm doing is I'm taking that whole, I'm not the one, I'm just informing them of what the goal is, and I'm trying to get buy-in. Now they're going to buy in. Yeah, they have to. But at the same time, I can do it through where there's going to be resistance and like, oh, I can't believe you would talk. You know what I mean? Like, because that does, I don't care what anybody says, Ed. To me, that mentally gets in your mind, and you start thinking about how you dislike this person, how they try to make themselves more than you. You know what I'm saying?
yeah. No, I definitely, as you were saying it, I was thinking about like, I got an email this week that says it was from somebody, one of the other directorate heads, and it says, "Hey, we need this, this, and this, and you owe it to the boss by tomorrow."
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you didn't have to put the boss into it to try to get me. I don't know if the intent was, hey, by me saying, "Oh, you owe it to the colonel,"
Mm-hmm.
then I'm gonna move faster.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not necessary. And that was something I learned as a young soldier too. Why use your rank? Why use your position to get your authority? Why not get your authority through the respect and trust of your the soldiers you work for or work
Oh
with?
yeah.
Well, you
Yeah.
do work for them. That's another thing. Yeah, I see, you got me now. So as a leader, you do work for those under you.
Yes.
You know what I mean? They work for you, but you work for them.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, you work for them to keep them going too.
Yeah.
So
Well, give you an example, man. So we have a, dental appointments come up, right? You know what I mean? And I thought, well, what a better way to help them? I scheduled, I scheduled, I think it was like 67 people, all dental appointment. I sent a list over to the doc, and I said, Doc, I need all 67 scheduled. He scheduled all 67 for me over a 3-day period, by the way. So he was really on it. I'm astonished at how well he was. And then I sent out this massive spreadsheet, that had everybody's name on it. They needed, and I said, listen, went ahead and knocked this out. People should be getting emails, text messages, all this stuff, because they put them in the system. Just, hey, do me a favor, make sure all of our soldiers are tracking when their appointment is, and do whatever follow-ups need to be to ensure that they make it. But it had nothing to, I didn't say you will make sure, I didn't do it that way. Instead, it was how you transform it. And one of the key things that it was from this article that I found some of this information on, it talks about that when humility is presented, that leaders act more like, say, a player's coach. Their position of authority is used to establish order and discipline between team members. To me, I think back to some of my coaches, way back when. I'm going to Al Bundy this, okay? Ed?
Are you going back to high school?
I'm going to go back to high school football. Let me put my hand right there and talk about back when high school football was. Anyways, but I think about high school football. I think about Coach Gabby Price, amazing guy. I think about Coach Morris. I think about Coach Hackett. There's like 2 or 3 more, and I can't remember the names. I feel bad. But I think about those coaches, and I'm telling you, Ed, I can't recall one time where I felt like they were one of those types of authoritative leaders, or one of those my way or the highway leaders. They always were in the trenches with us, always, helping us learn harder and showing us the things we need to do. And it just, the humility that they showed has echoed for years. I can tell you right now that there's still guys that I'm connected to on Facebook and whatnot, and we message back and, we send, like comments and stuff on there. And it's just amazing how that reflects throughout life of the way those guys were, So other than that, man, what do you think? Balanced authority, we need to move on, or?
Yeah, I think definitely balanced authority. It's interesting to me. Brian, listen to you talk about it. I think player coach is just, to me, like squad leader. They're the ones. So as a squad leader with humility, I'm not just focused on my career. I have to focus on the career of those around us. And by doing that, I help to promote others. And that is number 3, Brian, promote others.
Yes.
So basically, what it goes into is it talks about that those who exercise humility, right, they know the best way to get their team to prepare their team for success through encouragement, support, promoting their team to believe in their own potential for success. Well, yeah, that's what you're supposed to do as a leader. And then you're supposed, we're saying with humility, but man, I just thought this was just a thing that you were just supposed to do. So you got to tell them how to succeed, because the soldier who came in the Army yesterday does not know how to get to where I am. If he's in the same military occupational specialist as me, I can get him there. I can help guide him. I can give him the tools to get him there, and I can show him that I believe he has the ability to get there, right? So that's when we're talking about grooming somebody's skill and talent. But that's what we should do, though, because we've talked about before, developing our replacements. And that's where a leader should do it. And then the one thing that really stood out to me here, Brian, and I'm trying not to read from the article, but this was just, I really like this part. It said, humble leaders will even promote those they've helped groom into higher positions than their own.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I loved it. That, first of all, I will tell you, that is not easy. If you do that, that is not easy. I put right here in my notes, a big time ego check.
Massively.
Because, and so for me, because of my job, I spend a lot of time around mechanics outside my scope, but I still help to groom these mechanics. I still told them, hey, you need to do correspondence courses. If I had the ability to get them in a class, I still send them to class, knowing that the way the promotion system works, that mechanic was going to get promoted, and there was a chance that mechanic was going to pass me by because of how the promotion system is.
Right.
So when I was reading this, I really was thinking about that. I was like, that is not an easy thing. And I do remember a time, Brian, and you do too, because you were in around the early 2000s, just like when I came back in. I remember a time when this did not happen, that especially at that first NCO level, so the Sergeant E5, they were a little hesitant to help you because they were worried you were going to pass them. I don't know if you ever had that experience. I know I did. Things like holding you back from going to the promotion board. One of my sergeants, he found out I had a lot more promotion points than him because I was prior service. So when I came back in, I already was maxed on promotion points for awards. So this meant that once I went to the board, I was boom, promoted. And he came up with some of the craziest reasons to prevent me from going to the board. And then when I did, right? So now we're both sergeants, and again, I still have more points than him. We're both sergeants, and now he doesn't want to help me get to the staff sergeant promotion board because he's a sergeant promotable, and I haven't gone yet. But he doesn't want to help me get there because guess what's going to happen? I'm probably going to promote faster and pass him. So I do remember that from experience, Brian. I don't know. Have you ever seen anything like that or experienced that?
I would say, oh man, it's been quite some time since I've seen that type of thing. Because, like you said, that was in the early 2000s. I think we've kind of changed our mentality and culture since then. Really, because I mean, so for instance, we've had a discussion before about how awards were just given out like candy to help people get promoted. So I think getting people promoted was one of those things that we kind of drove, and so instead, I'd have to say that if there was an instance, I can't remember off the top of my head, Ed, and you know, I mean, there's been plenty of times where I've caught people say, and shoot, I've even said it myself, where it's like, I can't believe that person got promoted before me. You know what I mean? Like,
oh man.
And I don't get me wrong, man. There's the ego thing, and so we still all have some sort of something going on where we're a little bit selfish, and that's why it's always good to kind of remind ourselves, no, it's not okay to do this.
Facts.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are definitely people that I know. That you may also know. I know you know now. I thought to myself, how in the world does somebody as backstabbery get promoted like that before me? Type thing. You know what I mean? And I thought, and I've even told myself, like, all right, Brian, come on, you know better. You can't talk like that. You know. And there were people that I remember when I was a recruiter, and I was still a Sergeant E5, and I had heard that a particular soldier that used to be one of the soldiers that I would definitely say worked for me, because I still have this soldier's packet to this day. I was his sergeant. I was a 23-year-old sergeant. He was a 32-year-old specialist. And I remember driving him around and doing things and getting him to do what he's supposed to do. But then I had heard, I saw it on the promotion list that he had made staff sergeant. I'm thinking, how did this person make staff sergeant before me? You know, and at the time I felt it was righteous. I felt it was righteous anger and whatnot. But now I think about it, I'm like, well, I don't know him anymore. You know, what he was obviously a problem for the organization then, but he may have changed his ways. He may have changed his mindset. He may have done, you know what I mean? So, you know, I think about back and I think, well, I was being selfish and I felt like I wasn't promoting others like I should. So I try to refrain from that type of language now, if that makes sense. So, yeah.
No, it does. And the one thing is, which I think still drives that it's hard. It's hard to promote somebody ahead of you, but what you're really doing is you're doing what's best for the organization. So
Yeah.
just because you promote that guy, that doesn't mean you're going to get taken out of your position, your job. Maybe they're going to move him to another area where he can help enhance that team.
Yeah.
And maybe that to me, that spreads your influence, right? Because now by you taking care of him and being willing to promote him ahead of you or her, you showed that's okay to do. And now they're going to go to this other section, this other, position, and they're going to do it. And now you've altered the culture within your organization, and you've made the organization better. And I think that is crucial, for leadership and for exercising humility, Brian.
You know what, Ed, I want you to just put a quick note for number 5 about referring back to the promoting others, because I think we're going to hit upon that when you get into number 5. I know, because I've got something to say about it, but I don't want to lead into that right now. What I do want to do is go into number 4, acknowledging others. You know, acknowledging others is basically one of those things, Ed, that, for instance, I take your strengths and I make those strengths shine, but then whatever I notice is your weaknesses, I don't sit there and broadcast it to others, or I don't criticize and cut you down for your shortfalls in front of people or anything, or even in a one-on-one situation. I'm not going to cut you down because that right there, it may give you some short-term results. Like that person will be like, oh, I got to get this done. I got to get it. You know what I mean? But over time, over a longer period of time, I guarantee you they're going to have this mentality of, man, I've got to find a new job. I can't keep doing this, and that's that burnout. We've talked about burnout in the past on episodes. We actually did a whole episode about burnout. But when people are bullying or at work, and so listen, when I say bullying, I have a different mentality about it than what others may think, and I think it may not be as I guess loose about what bullying is. To me, it's kind of like I'm forcing myself on you, I'm pushing you, I'm calling you names, all those things. Now, for instance, you and I, we have fun. You and I can joke, right, back and forth, and we can kind of cut at each other, but we know it's at a certain limit, right? We did it during the fantasy football thing. Like we busted back and forth on each other, and it was fun. But especially at the same time,
I beat you.
See that, and that's what I mean. Like I know how to take that because I can't wait for this season. Hopefully, they don't cancel the football season. Oh, anyways, actually, so Kai, I'm going to do a rabbit hole real quick. Speaking of seasons, I think I saw Furman put a post on Facebook about setting the Xbox to computer versus computer and just watching the game. I'm like, man, that's a good idea. Maybe I'm going to go downstairs and do that with a football game too. Just watch computer.
I don't doubt he would do it too.
Oh yeah. That guy's so deep into sports, man. And that's one of his strengths, man. He knows what he's talking about when it comes to sports. But what I was getting at is, I think you and I cutting back at each other, that's not bullying. That's camaraderie. That's a esprit de corps together, having a good time. It's when I'm cutting so deep that it starts turning personal, or it starts to that I'm razzing you entirely too much, and people are ganging up on that razzing. To me, that does that. Now that turns into a problem, right? If you're in a group of people and 4 people are all razzing on one, that's a bullying. That, to me, that turns into a bullying situation, right? At the same time, as a leader or an influencer of an organization, when you are cutting down someone in front of other people, don't let it fool you. Those other people, they have 2 things going on in their mind. Right now, 1, they're cutting down on that person in their mind. Yeah. And 2, they're thinking, oh crap, I don't want that to be me. How do I get out of this situation? And that leads to that you're driving people too hard. You're promoting this push, and you're going to create that burnout that we talked about. So burnout employees, that turnover rate is going to be substantially high. But let's look at it this way. Leaders who operate from humility, they would never consider bullying their team members as part of the process for success. They don't strive on that fear-driven type situation, right? When people feel acknowledged by feeling successful, and if we go back up to the other ones, if I make you feel more successful and help you along, 1, I'm going to establish you wanting to stay with me in my organization. 2, I'm going to help promote you to become something better. So you have to look at it this way. A good leader with humility, they coach their team members individually and collectively on what went wrong. They develop new strategies, and they send their teams back into the field to try it again, right? So it's not, you did this wrong, you better fix this. Instead, it's, how are we going to get past this together? What are some of the shortfalls that we need to look at, that we can work on together? How can I help you? That's where you can use an I, okay? I do believe I is okay in some of the statements. And it's when I'm saying is, how can I help you, or what can I do to help this situation? For instance, maybe it is the leader. Maybe the leader is the reason why the situation is failing because they're getting too involved, right? and to have that candid conversation with your group or your team, and they can go back and they say, hey, listen, brother, this is the deal. We feel like you got a little too involved in this, and then we weren't able to do this because of this micromanagement piece, blah, 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 whatever. Then that's when the leader shows that humility, steps back and says, got you. Thanks for the info. I will step back. I need to look at the bigger picture on this. Thank you. Right? So what are you thinking?
I think that this sounds like extreme ownership to me, because I mean, this is almost a definition right here.
Yeah.
If the team went wrong, humble leaders know they were part of that equation.
Mm-hmm.
So as I read that, I was like, this is extreme ownership. And of course, there is a whole part of extreme ownership that's about check your ego.
Yeah, exactly.
And of all this whole little blurb here, Brian, I like humility breeds humility, because lately we've been really focusing on developing our culture and our organizations. And if First Sergeant Weber, demonstrates humility, then it lets his leaders down the line know it's okay to have humility, and that makes that organization thrive.
Exactly, man. And that's exactly where I felt like we were going with that conversation too, is knowing that if I'm showing it as the leader, then it's going to kind of incubate and keep incubating. And it's almost like one of those things. Have you ever heard that saying, Ed, where if I feel like I'm saying it too much, it's not enough? That's what it is. Yeah.
It's one of those.
No, I know it exactly. It's definitely I think I'm saying it too much, then it's not enough, because basically I've not convinced myself that it's good enough. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. All right. Hey, what's this next one we're supposed to get after?
So this one is interesting. This is collaborative. Number 5 is collaborative. Success is better gained from a mindset of collaboration rather than competition. And we a few episodes ago we talked about trust and stuff, and in it we talked about competition can cause a lack of cooperation and therefore a lack of trust within your organization and your group. Now, I personally believe there is some competition is okay.
Yes.
I will tell you, I've seen it really bad. So I worked for the phone company in Canada for a bit at Bell Canada, and I was in sales, back in the day. I'm going to date this. Back when you had to ask them for call display on your home phone or call waiting or, these other features. And it was a lot of people that were putting stuff on people's lines that they didn't ask for, because there was an incentive program and you can win things and you can earn points and buy things and get these nice things. And it was cool stuff like Walkman. It was cool stuff.
What was that? A Walkman? Not even a Discman? A Walkman?
All right, maybe a Discman. It might have been. It was a Discman. But that competition, you know what I mean? Like, so the problem is that, you have your sales team, but then you have your business office or help desk. Well, they're the ones that have to remove the services. And then, this is a blemish for them when they can't get the customer to maintain the service, which they never asked for to begin with. So it was kind of one of those things. And then even in the team, like, there was no collaboration because everybody was trying to sell as much as they could. And I think that's really just kind of demonstrates where this could go wrong. But collaboration is a key point. It's so much better when you can say, all right, this is what we're trying to get done. All right, I'm going to do this. Hey, I'm going to do this. All right, I'll do this. And then we work as a team and we get the desired results, Brian. Now, you did want me to refer you back to promote others when we got to collaborative.
Absolutely. And Ed, the reason was when you said, if I'm working with an individual and I'm helping getting them promoted, and now they become promoted to a certain section, what I have just done was I created a certain relationship with that individual. If that happens, now let's say that it's two different sections that need to work together. And what you did is you bridged that gap now, because that is that person who you helped to get promoted, and they're basically kind of like your equal now, or they may even be higher up in the totem pole of you. They're going to say, oh, I know this individual. They're definitely looking out for the better of everyone else. We need to work with this person, right? So now you're creating that collaborative And it, to me, you're building upon this. Like you said earlier, none of these are in any particular order. No, they're not. But at the same time, they're all intermingled, and you got to think of how they work. So I guess I would definitely say that this is not like a linear type thing. Everything we talk about, whether it be in influence or even leadership, which to me are both the same thing, it's not linear. It's more like a spider web. So you can go any direction at any given time. You just have to be able to read what's going on and take yourself out of the equation sometimes and say, listen, that person's more important than I am. I need to help them because they're showing what needs to be done to become a great leader, a great person. So that's why I look at it that way. Is I think you helping somebody get promoted could actually turn into a great collaboration down the road within an organization.
Well, that's funny. You should say that, Brian, because I just had an aha moment. So where I work now, I work with the host countries that we use for whatever exercises and things of that nature here in Europe. Well, all the stuff that I provide to the host country is provided to me from the logistics plans people, right? Well, that's where I came from. And what happened is I made the list to be promoted to Master Sergeant, and they sent me to this host nation support section, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because hey, he made it. Like, let's put him in a Master Sergeant position. I move up there, and now that section and I collaborate a lot. I told you I have a meeting Monday at 10. It's with that section to work through some stuff that normally they would have just done and give to me. But what we've been doing is twice a week meeting and doing it together, because what would normally happen is they would send it to me. I would red ink it, send it back to them. They would send it to me. I'll look it over again, maybe red ink one more thing. Now we're doing it together. And it's that relationship, because I came from there, that by promoting me and moving me into this section, into this slot, you created that collaboration, that bridge. So as you were speaking, I had the aha, like, oh, wait a minute, this just happened to me.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that's,
I'm a good sport about it,
Oh, I see what you just did there. You literally took us to the next little piece. Okay.
What?
Yeah, like being a good sport. Ed, when I first read through this material, I saw good sport, and I thought something totally different than actually
Not a
what they're
Patriots
talking
fan?
about. Stop. This, I guess the razzing maybe take a little bit. I felt like you were bullying that time. Okay. but no, the way, so when you see the word good sport, it means, kind of like, hey, listen, how you act on the ball field or whatever. I didn't think of it in the work sense, right? So it's kind of like, even though because you lose, don't be a butthole about it, right? Instead, be gracious for the loss and then learn something from it. It works in business too, man. Basically, business is a bit of a game if you think it. Actually, Simon Sinek, gonna bring him up again. He just wrote and released a newer book called The Infinite Game, and I think I'm about 3/4 done with the book right now, and I definitely could tell you that the mindset of business being a game and not a finite game, because he talks about infinite versus finite. Finite, there's an end, kind of like a basketball game or a football game, versus an infinite game it's never going to stop. It's always going. So you got to play for the long haul. You got to play for the long wins. The not short wins. Short wins are not going to get it for you every time, because after a while, the short wins aren't going to build up to long wins. They're just going to be for short-term gain. But you're going to win and you're going to lose in it. It's not how you kind of, especially what he talks about, is it's not how you reflect upon it to say, okay, I'm Microsoft and you're Mac or Apple, right? And my mentality, and he explains this in it, is my goal is to beat you in sales. Apple's goal is to make life better for people. Whose goal is finite and whose goal is infinite, right? I got to play this. I got to play this game. I'm thinking Apple's in it for the long haul versus Mac is in it for just the short gain. The short gain wins. I want to beat you in sales this quarter. Well, what about next quarter? What about the quarter after that? What's the overall goal? And they're making the goal the numbers versus the goal needs to be the, meeting the vision, meeting the mission. Well, at the same time, what he's talking about here is be a good sport by taking those losses that you had and learning from them and saying, you know what, not all is lost. We learn from our mistakes. Let's just not make them again. We also learn from our wins. Let's strengthen those wins. So, and it's, when it comes to winning and succeeding, humble leaders, they welcome each victory with a sense of grace and dignity, and they encourage their team members to do the same. And to me, that's a big thing about being a good sport. What do you think about being a good sport?
I will tell you what I think about it, Brian. I have a note here that I'd like to read to you, and it says, good sport equals lessons learned equals lifelong learning. And that's this whole paragraph summed up, man. So the one thing that really stands out in here is, it talks about that when you lose or when you fail at something, there's no such thing as a total loss, right?
Yes.
You learn from that experience. Let's think about video games. You've been playing Fortnite, right? So you started out playing Fortnite and you probably really stunk at it, and you get killed. And you get killed in a particular area on the map. I've never played Fortnite, by the way, so I'm just winging this. You get killed in a particular area on the map because there's a blind spot and the guy's hiding that blind spot. Well, you learn from that. And the next time you look at a way to approach him, without falling into that blind spot and being killed, because you learn from your failure. And it's the same thing in business. It's the same thing in military leadership. You learn, when I was a young sergeant, the first time I went to the first sergeant's office and got my butt chewed, got my butt handed to me, I never did that same thing twice. Like you learn, and you take that experience and you chalk it up. And in the next one, I'm going to talk about these experiences and the development, but
yeah,
that's what this is. This is about, hey, I touched the stove. Stove's hot. Don't touch stove again.
Hey, aha moment for me, man. Thanks for bringing it up. So I look at this. It's not the touch the stove thing, because my brother did that when we were kids. He burned his hand pretty bad. But the aha moment is I think about this in the same thing. You said you take in those losses and whatnot. Well, let's take it in a sense of as an influencer or a leader and our mentorship towards someone. And I might not accept like their failure as it was my failure, but at the same time, I need to accept it because I need to learn from that particular failure. And it may be something, completely unrelated to you as the leader. Right. But if you're learning from that, then you can kind of analyze it and think to yourself, okay, well, how could we have prevented that in the future for that individual? Let's say it was a sergeant that I worked with years ago who was a part of my section. And then down the road, I hear about a situation that happened to him at a different organization. Well, one, did I instill the humility and the integrity and all those foundational things that we talk about enough that he carried or she carried it through to the next, just keep going down the road? Right. Where was my missing mark? Why can't I learn from that? Why can't I be humble enough to say, okay, how can I teach an individual not to do something or to do something? So I look at that as also as part of that learning from those losses.
Yeah, and that's important. And I can see where it ties into humility too, because first of all, it's hard to accept the defeat, right?
Oh yeah.
And then when you do have to accept defeat, it's hard to be like, all right, now let me dig what's good out of this defeat, especially in the heat of the moment, like, the clock just struck double zeros. That's not the time for you to probably reflect and try to draw out what was good about it. But later on, and that's why we have, in sports, and you talk about your Al Bundy days. And I remember even in basketball, that's why you have film sessions afterwards, is because even though you lost, you can pull some positives out and be like, hey, look, like right here, you're doing great playing this formation, but here we didn't, execute. So
yeah.
I think that's a big part of humility, is just identifying. I think it's more important to identify when you have a setback. I think it's more important to identify the things to that you can learn from that than it is to learn from the great things that you do.
Yeah, definitely. I felt that was very powerful, Ed.
Did you, Brian? Speaking of powerful, I was really getting ready to do the He-Man thing.
So speaking of He-Man, I introduced He-Man 1980s version, our version, to my children the other day. They sat there and watched it. I was like, Parent victory. Yes.
Yes. That means Voltron has to be next.
Oh, no. Eva was already a Voltron fanatic. A few years back, we actually bought her the entire Voltron. She got all 5 lions, man. She still has them to this day.
I feel like you said Eva, not Ethan. You said Eva?
Yeah, Eva, my daughter.
Well, there's a Lego Voltron, by the way.
Oh, I did not know that, and you would be an expert on that Lego piece. Ooh, that reminds me.
Hey,
so you're talking about powerful.
Uh-oh.
Maybe you can reference
Yes.
your Batmobile incident here at some point.
Let's not. Anyway.
I touched a sore spot. He's still festering over that, so we don't want to go into that.
Yeah, that one still hurts.
Okay.
So number 7 is powerful, and the bottom line here, we're going right back to the experience. So it says, so basically, leaders who possess humility have developed this character trait through much success and suffering. Please reference number 6, good sport.
Yes.
Through both trial and error, they have developed into resilient, intuitive, hardworking, and incredibly experienced people. They honor their knowledge and experience and do not fail to put themselves, or more importantly, the ideas of their team forward. So this is what we talked about. We've talked about this a few times about when you're a young sergeant. I know for me, trial and error was definitely the thing, especially when learning to deal with soldiers, because I wanted to be cookie cutter in the beginning, one size fits all. And, through trial and error, I realized I can't handle every situation and every soldier the exact same. And as you do that, I feel like that's why as a senior, we're way more powerful than we were as a sergeant. I don't think it's the rank. We talked about not using your rank or position. I think the real power comes from those bumps, those experiences, that being the good sport, Brian. At least for me, what do you think?
Oh yeah. I mean, because basically the funny thing is, the thing about humility, it is a form of power. We actually did the episode where we talked about personal power and professional power, and we went through all that. But I do distinctively remember us talking about humility within that and how to use it. So it's like, wow, man, we got to keep on this track. And it's funny how we constantly are interweaving. Remember, spider web? That's what leadership is, a spider web. But with that, using that particular power of humility, it's influential to others around you, and it helps create more wind for your sail, so to speak. It just helps you gain momentum. And by being a good sport and learning before, and also to be able to collaborate with others and promote others and all that stuff, you are creating a sense of power that it's almost like you start rolling a snowball down the hill, and it just creates an avalanche at some point.
Yeah, you're right. And so you talk about that avalanche, and for a leader of humility, you don't let that snowball run you over.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so
you should be on the other side of it.
A powerful leader, so it doesn't make you a pushover, but you don't let your team members or yourself, whatever, get overlooked. So I remember being a young sergeant again and going to squad leader meetings, and some of the staff sergeants, they would try to bully me because I didn't know any better. But as I gained some knowledge and some experience as a leader, then I was more apt to say, no. We gave somebody up for guard duty the last 4 times. It should be somebody else this time. That's powerful, and that's not letting them push you over, because they would try to, thump their little rank on their chest and push me to the side, and didn't let it happen.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. So that's powerful, and that goes back to me saying many times, I was always taught you make them respect you for a rank higher than what you are.
Yeah.
And I think that this is. I think that's that powerful. And as a Sergeant E5, you just got promoted in April 2020. You probably don't have the experience to do that yet. But, after a few months, maybe even a year or so, you have some experience behind you now. And that's when you should really start to see, somebody who's senior to you, that staff sergeant, that sergeant first class, treat you a little more fairly. Like more of not an equal, but a little at a higher level than what they did, when you first got promoted.
All that you were saying there, Ed, it really led me to the mindset of pay the bill for leadership capital, just over and over
Mm.
again. Yeah, because of because you don't gain that leadership capital without digging in, getting in the trenches, doing the hard stuff, being a part of everything,
Digging
and
your
and
heels. Yep.
yeah, and don't set yourself above everyone else. You create more power from the lowest level or the foundation than you do. If I want to build a house, I don't start with a roof. I mean, hello, obviously, I need somewhere to put it. So, and to be powerful of a house, I got to build a good foundation. And then you start building up, and you can actually increase and make it, whatever it needs to be. But you got to start at the bottom and work your way up.
Yeah.
Sometimes I relate that. I've mentioned this before to different subordinates, basically those who've worked with me, that I came in the Army as an E1. So I know what it's like coming from the bottom of the barrel, right? Some people, they get to do things before they come in, and they get to be E2s and E3s. Some of them even are come in as an E4 specialist. I came in as a PVT E1, and
Yes,
I
sir.
remember, I know what it's like, and that's to constantly remember what it's like to be there. When I walk by a soldier, and you don't see it that much in aviation, because usually by the time they get to you at an organization, especially, they've already got at least the mosquito wings, as we call it, or a private, PV2. But when you see that fuzzy chest, those kids they're scared out of their
He means
wits.
their rank.
What's that?
You said their fuzzy chest. I said he means their rank.
Yeah,
What
I'm
their
sorry.
rank is.
Yeah. Oh, here I am using analogies that we understand in the military, and there's probably people that listen that like fuzzy chest. What, like hairy chest soldier? What's going on?
Not because he's 18 and just left mom's house. Fuzzy.
No. Is in like, so basically, we have our rank on there, and usually, if there's no rank, which is the PVT, there's nothing on there, so it's just like it's the fuzzy side of the Velcro. This is all you see, so we call it a fuzzy chest. But with that, I don't, I want them to know, like, for instance, when they see me, that they don't have to be fearful of me, right? I find there's more power in the game, and this is going to help with the next one I get into, but I find that there's more power in the game as a leader and influencer, that if I talk to them like a freaking human being, and I go back to humanity, to me, there's a lot more. Now, are they going to go to the position of parade RAS or whatever? Probably they will, right? But I'm not going to like yell at them just out of the blue, or I'd be like, if I'm making a correction, I'd be like, hey, listen, do you know what the rule is on this? And if they can answer me correctly, I usually finish it off with, I'm glad that means you got to do it that way, or, and much like with your correction you made, you're like, no, absolutely not. What's the correct thing, right? So you didn't jump out of the car and say, I'm sorry, blah, 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 and, you know what I mean? You didn't do that. You didn't identify the rank you were.
Yep.
You went from a different mindset and different approach, where what it's supposed to be, and you found out if they knew it. And to me, that works.
Yeah. Now, if the soldier starts like back talking, something like that, then maybe we like exchange ID cards so we can get everything clear, but it shouldn't be necessary.
No, yeah.
I think you have enough of a presence usually as a leader, especially as a senior NCO. I think we have enough experience, enough of a presence that they're like, they don't know my rank, but I guarantee a soldier's like, he's a sergeant something. Like,
I don't get a lot of the disrespectful things anymore, but when I notice a tone in a voice that seems to be like it's getting a little bit out of hand, or kind of like being wrong, I'll just look. I'll give the kind of the slight eyebrow raise on one side and say, excuse me. And usually you can kind of see, so you don't have to force yourself and force your power on people. Sometimes you can just have an expression.
Are you giving them the people's eyebrow? Is that what's happening?
No, not nearly as good as The Rock, man. His is amazing. Actually, I was watching a TikTok video. You ever watch TikTok?
If it pops up in a feed.
It is some of the stuff on there is hilarious. But anyways, but this is one guy. He could do both eyes as good as Rock. And it was like he was doing a song to it. I'm like, I was mesmerized by how his eyebrows could raise. Yeah, I was just like, why am I watching this? I don't know. His eyebrows are amazing. So anyway,
And there's a rabbit
and
hole.
I digress. There's the rabbit. Yeah, man, we're full of them, right? I digress.
Yeah.
And so powerful, I find that intriguing. And I also find that it's key to integrity.
I agree. I agree. Let's talk about how.
We will. I actually do want to. I hate reading everything off of this, but this one I felt like how powerful the little paragraph is. I feel
Yeah.
like it kind of needs to be gone out there.
So before you
I
do that, Brian,
go ahead.
so I highlight the things that I want to read, the things I think I want to discuss in a different color, whatever. This paragraph completely highlighted to read in case you told me to do the odd numbers or the even numbers. So just so
Yeah.
you know, I would have read everything in here as well.
Yes. Yeah, it speaks to the core, and you could almost take this to me, Ed, and you could make this like a small values type situation or value statement or a mission vision type statement for integrity. It's that's how strong I think it is. So here
I
we go.
agree. So
Go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry. So I think it's so strong that I actually have a note that says should be number one if these are in order.
Exactly. No, exactly. Because and we've
Yeah.
we did a show on integrity. Man, it's funny how it's like you want to go back and edit some stuff to add things
Yeah.
in, and this is one of those things where I'm like, man, this would have been great in that show to add this whole little paragraph. It's only what 5-6 sentences, but
Yeah.
it says a lot.
All right, Brian, well, share it with us.
Leaders who operate from humility did not build their reputation on a set of false, loud, flashy pretenses. They do not seduce others with fancy words not backed by subsequent action. These leaders are people others can depend upon. That's a key piece. Can depend upon, you know? And I'm going to go back to that in just a minute, but here we go. They do what they say and say what they do. There is no falsity to their word. Their word is as strong as oak. Their yes is a yes and their no a no. They are community oriented and believe the best way to lead and to bring people together is to do so with high levels of integrity, where each person is clear on their roles, duties, and goals of the overall team. Now, I said I was going to come back to that when I talked about people others can depend upon. A person of humility is definitely somebody that others can depend upon, because they know they can go to that person and they're not going to be shunned, they're not going to be disrespected normally, and that usually somebody of humility is going to help them through the waters, right? That idea of the yes be a yes and a no be a no, that's a biblical deal right there. You can actually find it in the Bible as one of the verses, and it talks about let your yes be your yes and your no be your no. Don't be wishy-washy. I feel like this is like one of those things, Ed, throughout the years as a leader in this service that I've had to develop over time, and I've had to catch myself earlier on as a leader where I'd say, oh yeah, we're going to do that. And I didn't do it. And I felt bad. Right.
Yeah.
And even in my personal life at the same time, I was doing that and I didn't. So for instance, my kids, I want to do a painting with them. We're going to, they're doing the homeschooling thing. And I told Michelle, hey, I love to do an art class with them. And I want to do a painting because I love to paint. I'm very Bob Rossi. I love doing oil paints, but I think we're going to do an acrylic paint actually, painting that I found online. And I'm like, I really want to do this with them. And it was funny. Eva last night, she says to me, she said, oh, we hadn't done our painting yet, Dad. And I'm like, exactly, honey, we're definitely going to do it. And my plan is to do it today. Right. I didn't say when I was going to do it because I had to be careful of, my yes be my yes and my no be my no, and my integrity. If I tell my kid I'm going to do it today and I don't get it done, I just violated my integrity. Right. And I don't, to me, like of all people I don't want to disappoint in life, It's there's three people major that I don't want to disappoint. One's my wife, and the other two are my two children, and
And
my
me.
third children actually, and my third child. Man, look at me, I'm feel like an idiot. And my third children, right? I have two daughters and a son, but I
And
don't want
me.
to disappoint. And who?
Me.
You were already disappointed when I told you I'm a Patriots fan.
That is disappointing.
but exactly. So, and I'm not saying, so I'm not exclusively only adding them to my integrity of the world, but I use them as my foundation. If I violate that with them, then I would do it with anybody else. Right. So I look at
Yes.
it this way. They're my foundation, and I want to carry that through my work, through my interactions in the community, through my church home, through all these different things. Is my yes be my yes, my no be my no, hold my integrity, and then also try to involve others in that to build that community. What are you thinking?
No, I mean, we've talked about integrity and how important it is. And I think the big thing here, first of all, I want to point out that it says their word is as strong as oak. And immediately I thought of the man known as the Austrian oak. So if you want a visualization of how strong their word is, you just got to look for Arnold Schwarzenegger in the 70s because he was called the Austrian oak. All right. But
Yes,
I
yes.
mean, but it does. If you think about it, that would demonstrate to you what you're talking about. Yes is a yes, no is a no. And I'm going to tell you that there are times that you may have to choose your words wisely, especially when you're dealing with children, like Brian's scenario. And for me, I found with soldiers, because sometimes they'll put you in a spotlight where if you give them a yes, you're not 100% sure, hey, am I going to be able to take this leave? I want to buy my plane ticket. You want that to be a solid yes, but there's other situations where it's like, because the Army changes and we're taught to be flexible. So there are times when it's difficult, but you don't compromise this. And the minute you compromise your integrity, you've compromised your influence, you've compromised your leadership, and you've compromised your ability to lead, in my opinion.
Exactly, man. I couldn't expel upon this, or basically the entire piece that we went over. Integrity falls very much in line with what it means to be humble. I don't think you can be humble without good integrity, and I don't think you can have good integrity without being kind of a little bit humble, because you're going to be put in situations like you said, and sometimes your integrity is going to reflect your humility in the conversation, and vice versa. But Ed, I think about this whole show, and I'm extremely grateful for us being able to do this together and still be able to keep doing this.
Well, thank you, Brian. So number 9, as Brian has shared with us, is grateful. And the most impactful way to lead others is to be mindful of inclusion and in the dropping of prejudices. When I went to the equal opportunity leaders class, that's one of the things they really hammered in is you have to be able to drop any kind of prejudice you have, because you're dealing with people in situations, and you can't let those prejudices get in and intervene in what you're supposed to do as an equal opportunity leader. So that we used to have the your little prejudice kit bag, because everybody has something that they just I don't like that, I don't, and you can't let that interfere. And as a leader with humility, you are thankful for the differences. I'm going to tell you, when I was working in the supply support activity, the warehouse, uh, and this kind of goes to the map idea that we've talked about with you, Brian. I wish I would have known this back then, but I mean, I had soldiers from all over the country. Uh, I've had, and you're all in this one tight knit group, and we all deployed. And at that time, man, all the junior soldiers they've never deployed. I think I had one who had deployed. I had two who had deployed. So there was a lot of challenges, but I was thankful for that, because one, it keeps things interesting when people are from different places and you can learn. You can continue to lifelong learn about people. And and then you as a leader, it really develops you to have to deal with people from these different cultures, these different parts of the United States. So I was always kind of grateful for the team I had. Yes. Did they make me crazy? Yes. Do I have gray hair now? Gray hair now because of them? Probably. But
Yes.
you have to look at those things. And then it goes on, they're talking about being grateful for resources provided to you, opportunities, like I said, with their team. It's the same thing now. Like, I am grateful for the job I have because I think that this job will prepare me for post-military, a post-military career. So you gotta be thankful for stuff like that. I'm thankful for somebody moving me and giving me that opportunity, even though it also helped them by building that collaborative effort between the two sections, Brian. So that grateful. And we also did a whole episode on being grateful too,
Yes, we
way
did.
back. Yeah, we did, right?
Yes.
Like way,
And
way back.
yes, we did. It was a while back. You know,
Yeah.
and I think about that whole grateful thing, and I think it's okay to, it's definitely, it's great to be grateful. But I think that was a horrible choice of words. But the way I look at it, man, is I think you got to verbalize it. I really believe people need to verbalize how grateful they are, and to be able to kind of
Mhm.
say, "Hey, I'm grateful for you as a team. I'm thankful that all of you are as hardworking as you can." And I'll tell you right now, my last commander and I, we constantly did this within our um, within our company. We would do that, and we would kind of express our gratefulness. And to me, I think it's very important to verbalize such a thing.
Yeah, no, I agree, Brian. And I think that's where for us, we talked about, I think maybe last episode, I think it was maybe it was last episode. We talked about the coins of excellence in the military. And that's why I think I'm telling you, if I am in any kind of leadership position, post-military career, I'm going to use coins. And I think that it's a good way to show somebody you're grateful on the spot. Even if you teach. So, my thing is I want to teach school, but why can't I recognize, the student of the month with a coin? It only takes me buying like a handful of coins, 7, 8 coins. I can have the same coin back to back years. Doesn't have to change, right? So if I buy 20, 30, but why not recognize that student will remember that coin? I promise you, probably the rest of their lives. Like, there's things that I had high school teachers do for me that I remember to this day. My typing teacher, yes, I said typing, not word processing, not computer class, typing teacher, Mrs. Dixon, because man, if she seen me where I wasn't supposed to be, she give me the look, and it made me so guilty. I went to class. So, and we're talking like 1989. So, you remember those experiences? At, but why not show somebody you're grateful for what they do for you? When I email now and I'm interacting with whatever other, branch, I will tell them, hey, thank you for all your support. Now I do sometimes worry, does this sound like I'm kissing up? Does it sound not genuine? But I at least say, hey, thanks for, whatever. Give you an example. Captain chased down some information for me. RFIs, we call them, require further information, right, Ryan? So she chased these things down for a unit that's in Lithuania. And I just shot her email after I got the information. I said, hey, ma'am, thank you very much for tracking these down for me so quickly. That's it. But she knew I was grateful for her assistance. And I think that builds relationships, and it also probably builds some collaborative efforts with us later.
Oh yeah, definitely, man. To me, that's where that builds that collaborative, builds that teamwork, and the humility it just kind of expands from there.
So yeah, no, Brian, you're I think we're of the same mind too. And we talked about thank you notes, right? We talked about that before and all these other different ways. So what are some other, I feel like you got some other steps to help us be humble leaders?
I must say, we are really on the ball with transitions.
The bearded ninja will be so proud of our transitions.
That's the bearded ninja. Get your beard balm anywhere, but found nowhere.
Oh, yeah.
No, yeah, exactly. Our transitions have definitely been on point. I hope he lets us know what he thinks. He's probably going to tell us that we use too many crutch words. I've been cutting, of course. Then again, I've been cutting a lot of them out when I edit it. Anyway,
well, if you just bring me back to work where I could rehearse, I would get rid of the crutch words.
Oh yeah, you know it. You know it. Yeah. So Ed, you know, it's funny. People would say, "Well, where do I start?" 3 easy steps right here. We're going to give you
The beginning.
yeah, how to be a humble leader in 3 simple steps. Humble leaders are made, not born. And once made, they can slip into arrogance if they are not careful. So, if you want to use these 3 steps, they'll help you develop and preserve that humility that you need. So, number 1 is be a constant learner. Excuse me. Be a constant learner. It is almost impossible to be egocentric when you remain fully aware of how much you don't know. When I moved to the for profit role, I should have accepted that I didn't fully understand the new financial system and sought help. That's an example of it. When I moved to become a platoon sergeant, I didn't realize there was so much involved in HR metrics and things like that.
Mm.
So you know, you got to look at, you kind of look at the bigger picture and realize that you're constantly learning. One of the things I could definitely tell you that has helped me stay humble, Ed, when it comes to something like that, being a constant learner. I've said this before, but anytime I take on a new role, new leadership role, new position, whatever, I have a small glimpse of, I don't know if I can do this. Right in my head, I literally have said this to me, like, I don't know if I can be able to, if I'll be able to do this. You know, I'll be able to accomplish it, or that I'll be me able to meet the expectations. And it's one of those things that helps me, and it's not that I do it on purpose. It's literally it's a reactive thing that I have. But then I'll sit there and I'll start dissecting things for a moment, and I'll be like, no, wait. If I did it last time with this position, or I did it that time in that position, I can do it in this position. I just have to learn what needs to be done. And I take on that learner role, right? And to me, that helps out a lot with that understanding how to be a constant learner. Your thoughts on constant learning?
Well, so it's funny, Brian, as you were saying that, I was so, with all the corona stuff going on right now and the kind of stay at home thing going on, I have started doing the DDPY or DDP yoga with Diamond Dallas Page, former professional wrestler. Very interesting story. Has a book. It's called Positively Unstoppable. Really interesting read. Anyway, so one of the things he says, and he may have got it from somewhere else, but he says this frequently at the opening of his yoga sessions is, whether you say you can or you can't, you're right. And that's one of the things when you were saying that, and you were saying how sometimes you kind of doubt yourself. That little quote, I have it on a sticky next to my desk, because when I'm like, I can't do this, I can look at it, and basically he's saying, you're right then. But if you say you can, you can. And I think that just kind of positive affirmation really helps. And I like that quote. It's very simple and to the point. Um, so just you have to be willing to learn and accept that I'm not going to be great the first time I do blah blah blah, but through experience, through trial and error, as we've talked about on this episode, right, being humble, having some humility, I am going to improve, and I'll get better.
That's great.
It's just, it's just, I'm doing finance stuff now. And in the beginning, I was like, this is hard. And now I'm kind of like troubleshooting stuff that other people are saying in meetings and going, no, you can't do that. That's not. And that, 6 months ago, I would not have done that. I sat there quietly because I was like, I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, I get you. And it's powerful, and it generates new power, but at the same time, it's funny. It's like you just said, I can sit there in meetings and say, no, that's not right. I think from that point, it's where do you take it? How do you go about adjusting those fixes and stuff, or what's the verbiage you use, things like that. I think that's what makes us a little bit more humble as a leader versus authoritative, or the SME who is driven by their power. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, 100%, Brian. And for us as NCOs, as enlisted, one of the things is when we step up and we can actually say, "Hey, that's not accurate, and this is why," then it helps us because we really have an image in the military of we're coffee makers, or you know what I mean, like we're not the thinkers. That's what we've always
Mm-hmm.
that's for the officers. And when you start showing, no, I'm a thinker. I'm not just a coffee maker. In fact, I can't even make coffee without it being a Keurig. So, but that's one of the things you're doing. You're changing a thought process of people who've been in the military for 20 plus years, and they're going,
Yeah.
oh wow,
Yes,
oh wow, I
definitely.
want to talk to him, even though he's a sergeant, because he knows more than this captain or this lieutenant does. So
Yes.
it's important. It's important.
So I rabbit hole real quick. Constantly learning. I would tell you, Ed, you may want to get a coffee grinder, start buying whole beans to start measuring it out a little bit. I have found that it is amazing in flavor of the actual coffee. Um, I'm
Oh,
just, we do it, Michelle and I do. And those of you out there who listen, you may do the same thing. It is it's so good. It does you get more flavor in the coffee. It's a different taste. I used to buy like, you buy like the can of Folgers or even like the already pre-ground stuff. It is not the
yeah.
same, man. When you ground your own, it is not the same. I promise you that.
All right, so I'm gonna give you a quick funny story to share with our listeners about coffee making. So I had a leader we talked about earlier. I had the tyrant, the like I want to scream and shout at you leader, and demanded I make him coffee. And I was like, yeah, I don't know how to make coffee. He said, you better explicit language, make me coffee, blah, blah, blah. So I made him coffee. I put half the can of coffee in the filter and I made him a pot of coffee, but it was only about 2 cups of water, 2 cups worth of water. And for some reason, Brian, he never asked me to make coffee again. I don't know why.
Wow. Yeah. So hey, yeah,
Yeah. However, comma, let's move on,
let's
Brian.
move on.
I believe I have number 2 here.
Yeah, go ahead. Hit us up, man.
Hey, hey, Brian, I have number 2.
Do you?
So leave it to me. Yeah, leave it to me. That one's mine. And that is what we're talking about. We talked about it earlier in the episode, Brian, is watching your pronouns. When we're talking with other staff or others about my team's work. So for you, Brian, when you go to command and staff at the battalion level, right, we're talking about what, 4 or 5 companies. Am I correct? About?
And yeah, something like that. Yeah, I don't want to give exact numbers.
So we'll say 5. Let's just say 5 companies. It's good. So we're talking about 5 different units. And if you get up there and say, my PT scores are good,
Yeah.
it doesn't sound as good as when you say my company has a 270 PT average, physical training average
Or
score. Or,
yeah, or our organization.
yeah, I mean, our organization, I said mine, which is also a poor example. But yeah, when you start saying, or even if you just say, hey, Alpha Company has a APFT score of this. When you brief, it sounds so much better than you to sit up there, because now one thing you've done is, now that you've said if I'm looking at you, what I'm thinking is, so then the failures are I too, right? Because a lot of leaders will be
Yes.
I in the successes, but they'll be we when there's a failure. You
Yes.
know what I mean? And then when your team hears that, I'm telling you, when you say, if you're briefing, like a warehouse, when I worked in the warehouse, the general would come around, or a colonel or some other VIP would come. And when you can say, we process this is how we run this organization, because a lot of times they want you to, hey, well, show me the process from beginning to end. Well, we do this. Well, your soldiers and they overhear that we, and in their mind, there's like, he's not saying he's saying we as a team do these things, and you're building leadership capital like we've talked about before. And I think that that's important. So get in the habit of using third person pronouns like we, our, and us. What are your thoughts, Brian?
Oh man, hey, when it comes to those words, I couldn't express enough how much my life needs to change. No, I'm joking. No, seriously. No, when it comes to those words, those are what set you apart, uh, building a better culture,
Mhm.
period. All right. That ownership, the ownership should be for everyone. But, and this is a huge but, when there is a failure, the I needs to come in. The my needs to come in. The me needs to come in. And when I say that, I don't mean as in I didn't have anything to do with this. That was their fault.
Right.
No. It should be, I need to accept responsibility for me and my team.
Yep.
Hey, sir. Hey, Sergeant Major. That's my fault. I need to re-engage that. I need to be more. That's that ownership by Jocko right there. Okay.
Oh yeah.
That's when I think it's okay to use the I, me, my, and mine. But when there's successes or just talking in general about the organization, there has to be we, our, and us always.
Yeah. No,
It
I agree.
I think it sets a different tone. For instance, if I hear somebody saying I too much, like we say on here a lot, like I've had this experience, right? So we're talking about experiences for lifelong learning. But at the same time, if I hear too much I's in a conversation with somebody, my mentality inside, I'm thinking just, okay, is this person just full of themselves, or how real humble are they? So we really got to work on the language. That's all. I think it helps out.
Yeah, no, you're right, and I think that right now the problem is at least for me, my experience, we see a lot of, I see a lot of the I for, like I said, for the success, but I see the we when it's a failure, and I think if you just flip flop that, I think you'll be on the right path.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Speaking of path, Brian, I thank you. Hey, I want to thank you because you've made me a great podcaster. Well, not great, but you've made me a better than average podcaster. And hey, you're doing a great job yourself, and you put in a lot of work. And I think that you are a key cog in this machine.
Well, I would definitely say, Ed, that our desire to do good has done great things, and I really can't wait to see where we go with this. All right, here we go. Ed, number 3, the number 3 step. This is your last step, everyone. So if you think about it, the very first one, constantly learning. So don't accept the fact that you know everything. When you know everything, you have stopped learning. And when you stop learning, you stop leading.
That's right, Hal Moore.
Number 2, exactly. Number 2 is get rid of the I, me, my, mine. Start incorporating more we, our, and us. This number 3, if there's anything that our show can provide you to help you become a humble, amazing leader, is for you to give credit. All right. Your team will be willing to go the extra mile if they know you will acknowledge their hard work. Give credit to others, even when you have done much of the work, motivates employees. If a product is built and it was done in my office and I knocked out a bunch of stuff and then I sent it out and I had people add a few things to it, I'm going to credit them. It's one of those things automatically, because we're in these group chats now, right? I'm going to send out a message and it's going to say, team, thanks so very much for all the hard work you put into this. I truly appreciate you. Now, I may have done most of the work, but I'm not going to sit there and say, thanks to me, I got most of this done. You guys did a little bit too. Come on, man. Like that, if that's not like just a shot in the neck or whatever, man, when people do that, it drives me nuts. What do you think about this giving credit, my man?
I mean, you give credit, and again, I think give credit really plays back to the when we were talking about the we, our, and us. I think that's how you can, one of the ways you can give credit, and it does get the employees fired up. It feels good. I mean, it's just a way to drive the machine. I think that it's genuine, and when they see that, they want to do more. What's next? What can I do next to,
Yes.
to be recognized? Because you're recognizing the hard work by giving them credit. When you don't give them credit, they think their hard work is for naught, and then it frustrates them.
Yeah. In a funny, quick story, and I know we're hitting that we're hitting like a 2-hour mark almost, Ed. This is a really good topic.
Boom.
I know. Quick story though. So I got this young lady. She used to work with me over in Korea, and what an amazing, she has a lot of heart in the game and stuff. I didn't see this coming. She posted something on Facebook just the other day, and I'm not saying I didn't see this coming because I didn't think she could do it. She just didn't have. She didn't seem like the type of person who'd like to do that. I'd been pushing other different types of workouts for her and stuff. But she had posted that she'd run a 5. She doesn't know why she did it. She went and ran 5 miles. She got her this certain time. And, it makes it easy for me just to keep scrolling, right? But what's that mean to
Mhm.
that young soldier that she's not in my chain of command anymore. She's not within my organization. That I stop a moment, I hit the comment button, and I make a little comment, like keep getting after it, and then a bunch of little fire symbols. I like emojis sometimes, but I put that on there, and that probably made her feel good. One, because she knows I saw it. This is where I guess this is where I have the disagreement with Simon Sinek, Ed, about social media, because it's a way for us to keep track of people away from us. And like for instance,
Mhm.
you and your wife, you're doing a lot of different things. We talk maybe 45 minutes before the show, we talk in the show, and then usually we're done. And we may do this once a week. So I don't get to see everything you do, but I enjoy seeing all the stuff that's going on. And I make comments or I hit the like button, stuff like that. Uh, to me, I think that's a way of communicating good job to others.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, social media is powerful for stuff like that too, and I don't see the issue. I mean, there's people we scrub the promotion list. We always look, hey, do I know somebody? And I've shot emails to people and be like, hey, congratulations, I see you made the promotion list. And meanwhile, I haven't had a traditional email or conversation with them in years, but you still congratulate them, and you still reach out and give them their, it uh fires off those endorphins. That's what I was looking for.
Exactly. No, it does. If it shoots off, and actually, not the endorphins, more like, because the endorphins for that long term, I want to say he talks about the endorphins for like long term runners high and stuff. You reach a certain threshold, you hit the pain, the endorphins kick in, like dopamine, but more like the ones oxytocin and serotonin. Those are the ones. Those are the
That's
happy
it.
drugs that the body produces.
Yeah.
I think also, like, so if I'm scrolling through and I see these things, my first thought is like, why not congratulate someone on that, or say, hey, keep going? Or another one that I like to do. This is just me. I like to send a private message. I'll DM them. Okay. I don't want like this whole group of chat, seeing everything, that I may want to do a private message to somebody, good or bad, to
Right.
me. And it does another thing to it. It shows that I'm paying attention to them. Right. And that's encouraging. I don't care who you are. That's encouraging. I mean, so other than that, Ed, I think humility, we could talk about this for another 2 to 5 hours. I know we could,
No, we can't, because I gotta go to bed.
but we've got to end the show. We have to end the show at some point. So with that, I do have a task, but I guess you could say it's very much like many of our tasks before, because it's going to be like, hey, you go out and do an action, but they don't have to come back and tell us anything. And the reason being is because the action of humility, it has to be a process, Ed. I don't think it's just like go do it and then come back and say, oh, I did this. What do you think? It needs to be a process. All right. So to start the task, for those of you who are out there, to start the task, it's showing that humility. I want you to go out throughout your day and see how many times you can cut out the I, me, my, and mine. Okay, within
That's
your
a good one.
statements about you and your organization, your team, whatever it is that you find to be important to you. Okay, and I want you to see how much you can cut in the we, the ours, the us's, right? The theys, the them. Don't single out people. Try to find that inclusive language and see how often you can do it. That's the task. You don't have to report back to that, because that's going to take time. That takes learning. But once it's in your head and you start doing it, you're like, oh, I got to say it this way. Or you'll correct yourself in the middle of it. And that's okay. That's called being a constant learner, right? And at some point, you're going to get gratitude. They're going to show you gratitude and give you credit for it. Okay. Ed, if I was a brand new listener today,
Brand new.
and brand new, just this is my first episode, which if this is your first episode, please go back and listen to the other 68 and plus, because we've got a lot more material. But Ed, if I was a brand new listener today and I wanted to know how to better connect with you and I, or just the people who follow the instinctive influencer kind of culture, what's some of the things you would recommend?
Well, I would definitely recommend that you go ahead and check us out on social media platforms such as the Instagram or Gram, the book or Facebook or the Twitter at 101 Influence. You can also check us out at our website at 101 Influencers. At 101 Influencers. You can check us out, see some faces. I haven't looked in a while. I'm sure the picture of me and my wonderful poodle is still up there. Um, but you can check us out there, answer the questions on the Facebook page, jump in, get involved, post something inspirational, whatever it is you want. If you want to leave some feedback or rate us, then go ahead and wherever you download your friendly podcast at, go ahead and rate and review us and leave some comments. We ask that you leave some sustains and improves on there. We have done an AR episode. So if you're new, go back and check that out after action review episode. But yeah, leave us some sustains and improves so we can make the show better for you.
Exactly. So, hey, reach out to us. That the whole sustains improved. I'm very much into that. If you liked what you heard, leave us a review on Facebook. That's probably the best way for Ed and I to be able to kind of see. And that's when you do that 101 Influence and you go to that first page for 101 Influence, you can actually leave a review for the show. Do it and let us know, because that helps us know where we are. You can also, like he said, you can message either one of us and let us know if you have some thoughts on something or something you like to hear more about or you like to share. You can send us articles. You can send us information. We are very accepting to learning more from others, not just us putting out this information we found. Okay. Other than that, Ed, I got nothing else for the crew. I'm really happy with what we provided today.
Hey, yeah, just one more thing, Brian. On a serious note, I'm sure that when this episode is available, that the COVID thing will be still out there, and we'll still be dealing with that. And I just tell everybody, be careful. All right, hey, pay attention to the guidance. Take care of each other. And I think the hashtag is what, flatten the curve. I'm telling you, it's I at first I was kind of like, but now it's kind of scary watching the numbers jump. And over here in Germany, there's a lot of precautions in place. So please, for our listeners, be careful out there. We don't want anybody getting sick.
Absolutely. Be a good influence to those around you and try to follow those. Stay at home. Hey, it's a good time to listen to the podcast, Ed.
Absolutely.
All right. Hey, with that, I am Brian.
And I am Ed.
And this has been the Instinctive Influencers Podcast. Remember, you interject humility in your life, it will help you in every way as a leader and an influencer. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.